televiewers, and thank you very much for joining us on our midweek's edition of the debate program Viewpoint on DBS Television. Viewpoint, our panels are there to give you their ideas, their opinions on certain aspects concerning our everyday society. And talking about our guest tonight, we have Subiru Martina. She is a journalist, and we have Mange Venasius. I'll begin with you, Subiru. Good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Vanessa. Thank you once more for inviting me here on set.
Mange Venasius, good evening.
Good evening, Vanessa, and good evening to our viewers.
In a moment, we'll be taking the first part of the show. Welcome back. The first part has to do with the yes or no question, and we dive directly into the question. Question number 1: is the government COVID-19 response plan sufficient in fighting the pandemic, that is the coronavirus pandemic? Subiru Martina, yes or no?
No.
No. Mange Venasius?
I think so, Vanessa. Yes.
Yes. Question number 2: is lifting COVID-19 restrictions in most African countries a dangerous move at this stage of the pandemic? Subiru, yes or no?
Yeah, it is dangerous.
Yes. Mange Venasius?
Yes, it is dangerous, Vanessa.
Question number 3: is the African continent capable of working on the global discovery of the coronavirus cure given her health infrastructure? Mange Venasius, yes or no?
No. Africa is not capable.
Subiru?
No.
No. And our last question for today: the Anglophone crisis in the Northwest and the Southwest regions appear to be more than the government to handle. Mange Venasius, your take on that?
Yes, Vanessa, it is.
Subiru?
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is. Stay tuned for the debate. We'll be right back. In the first question, we asked whether the government COVID-19 response plan is sufficient in fighting the coronavirus pandemic. Subiru Martina, you said no, it's not sufficient. What makes you think it's not sufficient?
I said no because right now in Cameroon there is something I can call a war between family relatives of those suffering from the COVID-19 and different hospitals fighting. We had some cases recently. I don't want to cite the names of those hospitals, but we came to discover that some patients are being taken as COVID-19 patients, whereas they are not, as it is claimed by their family members. We had a case yesterday, or was it day before yesterday, in a hospital around Douala here, where it was a total fight. I think if government had taken this other measure of implementing or making sure that particular hospitals should take care of those patients, we wouldn't have reached at the stage where family members will be beating doctors here and there.
Talking about particular hospitals, you're talking of private sectors, like our private clinics.
Yes. I think all government hospitals would have been put forward for a treatment center of COVID-19. But then you find other hospitals on social media where their doctors are being beaten here and there because they accuse or they say that some members are COVID-19 patients, whereas they are not. And again, on another perspective, the issue of tackling the lockdown, it was not tackled well in the beginning. And more to that, they came back again to say, okay, another time has been added for drinking spots and restaurants. That is not how I think they should have tackled the issue of trying to curb the pandemic in our country. So I think there are many other reasons, but then the two that I have just cited are a priority. And more to that, there is also this issue of house-to-house tests.
Mass
like
testing.
I said, yes. I have never seen it. So I don't know how it happened. We have our neighboring countries that did so, but Cameroon have not done so.
Cameroon have not done so yet.
I can say Cameroon have not done so because I've seen no one in my home, and I continue going out, but I go out protected. So I think Cameroon has not tackled that issue well, where we'll say, okay, it has reached a certain point where we can go out confidently without having any fear.
All right, thank you very much for your viewpoint, Subiru Madina. Mange Venashus, our guest just highlighted a number of measures in order to tell us that the government response plan is not sufficient enough, but you rather think that government has done more than enough to contain the virus?
Yes, Vanessa, is the government plan in handling this crisis sufficient? Yeah, it's not like the government of Cameroon is coming out with another plan different from what the world has. When this crisis, came on, there were these issues that were brought out, these barrier measures that were adopted globally, worldwide. Wearing of face mask, isolation, confinement, washing of hands, respecting simple, basic hygienic conditions. This is what the government put in place. But I think the problem with the government of Cameroon in the fight of this pandemic is that ability to do a kind of follow-up in implementation of these rules. The problem is the government, their strategy, it is sufficient to fight the pandemic. But then once it is neglected, there is no way that these normal measures, the very measures that worked in some other countries, that worked in China, that is working in France, that is working, it is not able to work here because there is no follow-up. If we talk of confinement, we cannot confine part of the country while the part is still confine sectors, while other sectors are operational. The country is not divided into sectors that say this part of the population, they are for these sectors. No, it is a general kind of thing. If we were talking of confinement in Cameroon, let the government of Cameroon put the rule. We are talking of confining, let them confine everybody. But then, when we confine and say we close schools and we close churches, markets are going on. We close schools and we close churches, drinking bars, drinking sports, leisure, they are going on. We cannot fight the pandemic in that way. The measure to close down activities is a standard measure. That's why most countries, they went into it. Cameroon did it, but did it their own way. That is where the problem lies. So the measures they were putting, when I remember the Prime Minister was talking about this thing on the 17th of March, he read out these rules. If these rules were applied, Vanessa, look at the borders. The index case of COVID-19 that we had in Cameroon came from outside. The second case was the product of the first case. And the third case came from outside. Which means if Cameroon had closed the borders like countries are doing, we may not have been where we are. But since the borders were allowed open, cases came in. It is not that Cameroon was supposed to fabricate or come out with a new measure. It was just simply following up these measures that were put in place. They were well put in place, but then how closed were our borders? That was where the problem is.
Equally, I want to add, since the Prime Minister, was it some 2 weeks ago, had to bring down some of the measures, nobody is putting on a mask again. So I don't know if the follow-up is still there. Because when it was obligatory, you will find policemen holding people on the road. Some will whip, you will pay a fine and all the like, but today I'm not seeing that again. So the question is it finished already in Cameroon? Because government has not made sure that the measures should be respected, strictly respected as it used to be. Because you find a policeman, you pass in front of a policeman now, he's not going to ask you why you're not putting a mask. Whereas when it was strictly implemented, if he catches you without a mask, you pay a fine and you get a mask immediately. But then many things have changed, and many people get to confirm that it has truly finished from Cameroon, whereas it is not.
And Vanessa, please, before we continue, some people are even of the opinion that the government gave a fake announcement that coronavirus existed because of, you know, remember the World Bank announced some kind of millions to be dispatched. Since Cameroon got her 135 billion francs from the International Monetary Fund, that is why they had to relax the rules. That is what the people are convinced of, because we were still talking about it. Why should we close schools? Most of all, close churches, close mosques, and then ask drinking spots to open.
Markets to open.
That is the point.
Thank you very much for your point of view. We continue with your Subiru Martina. In the second question, we asked whether lifting COVID-19 restrictions in most African countries a dangerous move at this stage of the pandemic, and you said yes, it is a dangerous move.
It is a dangerous move because Cameroon yesterday already released a communique saying that there is this Air France something that's going to be flying now for the business class. And I asked myself, has France already lifted its own measures? I don't think so. So how is that flight going to leave Cameroon to land in France when it has not lifted its own ban?
In that communique, we saw a lot of African countries, about 6 of them.
Exactly.
Yes, that have opened their airports already.
They've opened their airports, and that is how the virus will keep on being transported from one country to another.
From the European country to the African continent.
Exactly. France said they will open their, they will lift their own ban by the 1st of June. But Cameroon is already saying that flights leaving Cameroon to France and vice versa will begin. And I asked myself, how can that happen? Is the plane going to land on the on air in France? I don't know why some African countries always depend on Europeans. I think we can do better, because now at this point in time, it is crucial. Kenya yesterday released over 7,000 inmates. Okay, they've released over 7,000 inmates, those that have already been infected and those coming out from the prisons. That is how the virus keeps on multiplying day in, day out. Cameroon did same recently, and people are even crying of theft and left and right. So I don't know what is really happening to Africa, but I think this was the best time for Africa to change, and nothing concrete is being done about that. Madagascar took a move, yes. They've started school already, as I can say, and life is going on there smoothly.
And other African countries also have reopened their schools.
Other African countries as well have reopened their schools. Benin, for example, we can say Benin had less cases than us here. They were not really suffering from the virus, as I can say, because they had taken their preventive measures from day one. And I don't think someone even died from Benin. Even if it were the case, it should be one, as I saw on a certain website. But I think Africa was not yet ready to uplift the ban. And now, at this crucial point,
it makes it very dangerous.
Yes, it makes it very dangerous.
Manke Fenashu, so you're of the fact that lifting actually COVID-19 restrictions in most countries makes it or brings Africa to a dangerous stage at this point in time.
Yes, Vanessa, I share that opinion that you know, most African countries, they have programmed or they have relaxed the measures. What I understand about this virus is, as of now, Africa cannot talk of having reached the peak of the virus. In other countries, in other continents, we are talking of France. You know, they are talking of they are already foreseeing a period in which they are going to lift the confinement period so that life should come back to normal. In those countries, they are already reaching, they have passed the peak of the virus. If you look at what we have, Cameroon is still only talking about 2,000 cases. And Vanessa, if we had to carry out what we call mass testing in Cameroon, like in most African countries, we will be more than that. Will be more than this 2,000. And then if we have such type of number, and we're talking of lifting, it's not only Cameroon that has softened the barrier measures, most African countries are doing so. So one tend to doubt whether Africans are, you know, do we just copy from what the Europeans are doing? Because America, you know, Trump said this thing is wasting the economy. Let's just bounce back to economy and continue while fighting the virus. Is it because Trump has said so that Africa is doing so? When we look at it, we are saying, if you look at the situation in Africa here, we want to give the World Health Organization Director General, who said Africa should be expecting the worst in this virus. If we are lifting up the restrictive measures, therefore, we are saying that let the heavy casualties of this virus, let it be felt in our African countries. But then I think that Cameroon or Africa, blessed as it is, because actually this is God fighting for us in Africa. If this virus had taken the same proportion that it took in other continents, I think Africa should be more than what World Health Organization was predicting. But then God is on our side, fighting for us. That is why the death toll in Africa is extremely low. Africa put together is not even up to what is happening in France, what is happening in Italy.
In the US.
But we are talking of Africa, the whole continent. The deaths that they have recorded, they have not up to what is in one country, in some other continent. Yet, we want to open the way. We are like saying, okay, let's open the way for the virus to come. If Cameroon should say that, okay, go about and drink, but wear your face mask, respecting, we are saying that let's open the way, let the virus come in. Now, some other people are of the opinion that Africa want to adopt a kind of, adopting a general immune, system for the virus, which is wrong. When we are adopting a general immune system for the virus, it is because we are looking forward to a vaccine. But then we have nothing as of now, nothing generally accepted, because Africa claims, countries are claiming that they have their own cure.
All right,
so,
Margaret, in your proportion, you said we are looking forward for a cure for this disease, and that leads us into the third question in tonight's edition: is the African continent capable of working on the global discovery of the coronavirus cure, given their health infrastructure? And you said no, we are not ready, but in a way, some African countries, Madagascar, Cameroon, are already talking of a herbal remedy to this.
Yes, Vanessa, your question ends with a clause, given their health infrastructure. When we talk of health infrastructure, we know that Africa generally is lacking in that domain. We don't have enough infrastructure to carry out research. That is why, if we don't have the infrastructure, it is doubtful that what we will produce. I said it is God fighting for us. We are depending on nature. And if we are depending on nature, it means we cannot scientifically, when we say scientifically, it is putting 1 and 2 and justifying that 1 plus 1 is 2. Scientifically, you are right. Scientifically, those who are coming out with the cure, traditional cure, they cannot scientifically say that we have used this, or that this product contains this element, it contains this element, it contains this element. We have just simply said, okay, I was discussing in the morning when I was coming in with one taxi driver, and he was saying that in Africa, we are used to malaria, we are used to, flus, we are used to all this, that these are, we combine together, they form coronavirus. Therefore, Africans are of the conclusion that if we treat malaria, if we treat flu, because this time, most of the time we have flu, this time we have, cough, catarrh, and all the like. We have been treating it using our traditional, put together, we now treat these things, and we conclude that we are treating coronavirus. Thank God, they are working, but I rather think that this is, they say we are working by chance. But then scientifically given, from our infrastructure, Africa cannot stand the ground to compete with multinational laboratories out of the continent that work on drugs, that produce some other vaccines that are useful in Africa. So that is why, the world has this pessimistic look on the outcome or what is coming from Africa. That's why we think that nothing good can come from Africa.
Subiru Madina, you support the fact that with our poor health infrastructure, we could not actually, or we are not capable of working on a discovery of a COVID-19 vaccine?
We could work out on a discovery, but with the poor health infrastructures, we cannot. That is a could and a cannot. So you understand that Africa did not make good use of its... Africa did not make good use of this opportunity. Because Madagascar discovered a cure, Cameroon as well discovered a cure, and no European assistance. What do you expect? Nothing. And we still have some heads of states, African head of states, that till date, when they are sick, they are still being taken out of the continent to go and be treated in Europe. So what do we want for ourselves? I think we should not lay the blame on anybody, but on our own leaders. Because if they thought it better or good that we have good infrastructures in our countries here in Africa, we would have had them long ago, not today. And I think it is a lesson as well that... An
eye-opener.
Yes, it is a lesson and an eye-opener that to countries from Africa have been able to come out with a cure, but nobody is ready to assist them from Europe. So you understand that Africa has been left on its own because the World Health Organization and other European countries thought that by now Africa must have lost almost half of its population, but it is the contrary. It is the contrary, and I think from now henceforth, Africa needs to work as one in order that they should be able to develop good infrastructure so that when such a pandemic or such an epidemic occurs, they will be able to tackle this with no problem. Why are we still counting on Europeans? Because we have the Centre Pasteur in Cameroon. If we had our own laboratories, these things would have not been in our country. We would have been proud to say that no, we have our laboratory in the continent, but we still bring European laboratories to our countries. And what do you expect when you pay $1 million francs just for a test to be carried out at the Centre Pasteur? That test, that the sample that have been collected will be sent out and brought back with the result. And how do you expect Africa is going to grow? I think it's an eye opener as well, because Africa needs to wake up from its sleep, stand up, and start working.
And think of how they could develop their health infrastructure.
Vanessa, yes, Vanessa, please, if just 1 minute, if I can say something about. She said something about the leaders, African leaders. We have a problem here in Africa. When we talk of the development of Western world, no country develops alone. You know, it is they share their experiences. That's why you have researchers from America, researchers from China, from France, from Belgium. They come together and develop something that helps mankind. But in Africa, we have leaders who develop this kind of chicken-hearted attitude in which they fail to remember that, to think that we can support Cameroon to grow, we can support Madagascar to grow. That is why up to today we still have African leaders who do not even think of what is coming out from Madagascar. In that way, Africa cannot be able. Unless Africa proves to the world that we are able to, the world can never look at Africa. But then African leaders, they are they are disappointing us in their attitude, because they are afraid. Some of them, they are afraid to, they will be tagged that they did not support them in the fight. But then, like she said, I think that this COVID-19, disease is a situation that Africa needed to have taken their independence. They should prove to the world that we are independent. I like the courage of the president of Madagascar, because he has been in the forefront to tell the world that we can. And some African leaders, they are just hiding away. We don't see what they are doing.
Zambia recently failed us again.
All right, maybe in the subsequent edition we'll have to come up with a question. We'll be discussing all this. But for the moment, let us take our last question for tonight. The Anglophone crisis in the Northwest and the Southwest regions appear to be more than the government to handle. And to imagine, you say yes. It is more than the government.
It is more than the government. If I want to bring back what recently happened to Barrister Agbogbala, you see that government is still putting ways or trying to make sure that the name Anglophone or Anglophone whatsoever should die. Agbogbala is just a lecturer at the University of Buea. He decided to set that question because many students have lived it. They know what has happened. They have lived it not by storytelling, but on the field. Some of them have been tortured as well. But the Cameroon government is finding it like a pin in their flesh, because they don't want to hear anything about that again. Okay, we had the Anglophone crisis. It was more than them. But coronavirus now has come to quench that, how can I put it, the fire, the flames that was on the Anglophone crisis, and people have almost forgotten what was happening. So you see, the government now is counting but on the coronavirus to make sure that everything returns back to normal in the English regions of the country. Recently, the reconstruction plan.
The reconstruction plan.
Yes, was shown to us, and the president donated some amount of money. But when you look at the reconstruction plan, It is not the reconstruction of houses or houses of individuals. It is of government locales or infrastructures. So you understand that the locales in this part of the country are not even taken into consideration. Even if your houses were burnt, they don't care about that. Whereas they go restructuring government infrastructures, which I think this is not time for it. They should begin with those houses that were burnt, those houses that were destroyed. They should bring back those people from the bushes and give them houses, because that bush there is not their home.
It's not their home. Thank you very much for your point, Subiru Madina. Manga Venashu, so you're supporting Subiru Madina's fact that the government have not been able to handle this crisis. Yes, you are supporting. So who then should be able to intermediate between the government and the citizens in order to solve this crisis?
Vanessa, who then should mediate? I think it is when something is more than you, when you cry for help, help comes. We are living in a situation where we have an internal crisis that has gone on for barely 4 years today. Vanessa, I look at it from the point where you as a parent, when your child gets up and challenges your paternity or your maternity as a parent to that child, there is something wrong. Because if you don't succeed in clarifying that child and you allow the situation to drag for long, it is portraying your weaknesses. And I don't think there will be any country that would like to live in such a situation that we have lived in now for close to 4 years. I think it is just a clear mark that it is becoming complicated for the government to handle. Because we have struggled negotiations, we have struggled with the national dialogue, we have struggled with the use of force. The head of state has announced more than 3 times the use of armed or the use of force or the military. We are not we're not having any headway. Therefore, I think that it's high time the government called for international, maybe community to come in and mediate in this situation. Remember, there was talk about the Swiss peace talk. We don't know where it died, and up to now, the people have been waiting to see what the government should put on the table. The reconstruction plan cannot go on because it is not, we cannot construct on a war front. It is still ongoing, and how can we construct? So I think that the high time is the government can, but then it appears to be more complicated for them to handle. That is why it is still dragging up till now. And I think the government does not take any pleasure in seeing it continuing this way. Because we're talking of Cameroonian citizens. And if anything happens, they're talking of the government of Cameroon. There's one government in Cameroon. Yes, in as much as there is one Cameroon, there's one government. So if it is dragging, it is the weaknesses of this government is because the government has failed to handle it. Maybe handle it on time, because if you would have, they say in English, a stitch in time saves 9. Maybe if that stitch was saved in time, maybe we would not have been where we are, Vanessa. All
right. Thank you very much, Manga Venashus, for coming tonight.
The pleasure is mine, Vanessa.
So, Subiru Madina, we are wishing you a good night.
Thank you.
And to our televiewers, hope that you enjoyed the debate viewpoint on DBS television. Do stay tuned, and until we meet again tomorrow, make sure you take care of yourself by taking care of your family and of course your community in order to help fight the spread of the coronavirus pandemic in Cameroon, Africa and the world at large. Until we meet again, bye bye.